There's a reason you shouldn't mess with Ouija boards. Some people say they're a gateway, others that it's just a game. When Carrie was in high school, she found out the hard way why you should never use a Ouija board. Carrie said, "This was probably a good 15 years ago or so. A group of friends and we would play for fun every now and then until one night, we decided to push it a little further. We began like we always did, by locking all the doors and windows, because the girls in the group already had paranoia kicking in. We would shut out all the lights and head upstairs to the room we always played in and light some candles. We started playing. We made contact with 3 different spirits, as we normally would. These were the spirits of the house. They're the whole reason we started playing in the first place, because strange things were already happening in the house. And being dumb teenagers, our curiosity arose. Anyway, everything was normal that night. And then we contacted a 4th spirit. We kept taking breaks, and we would try to get our normal spirits back. And we would, for a short time. They would warn us to just go, say goodbye, and stop. And that the 4th spirit was nothing we wanted to be playing with. But we continued to play. The 4th spirit seemed to be taking over the conversations. The 4th spirit wouldn't ever give a direct answer on its name. We asked it, was it in the room with us? And it said, yes. And then it proceeded to tell us that it was everywhere with us. Creepy. We continued our session with this spirit for a little while, when we started to hear a very slow, ticking kind of noise, and it seemed to be going around the perimeter of the room. The noise stopped at a small dog kennel that was in the room. So we asked if it was by the dog kennel, and we got a no reply. We just stayed quiet and looked at the dog kennel, waiting for something to happen for a minute. A few questions later, the cage door on the dog kennel flapped open and closed 4 or 5 times, and we freaked out and ended the session, latched the door on the dog kennel, and threw it into the hallway. We took a 5 to 10 minute break to recoup because at this point, our adrenaline was through the roof, and then we couldn't help it. We started playing again. We got the same spirit, the 4th unnamed spirit. Dumb teenagers, what were we thinking? We knew it was the same spirit just by the responses we would get and how fast it was moving. Anyway, we started talking with this spirit again. After a few minutes, we started hearing the slow ticking noise again creeping around the room. After a minute or two, the clicking stopped. Right behind me. At this point, everyone is silent, just looking at me. I had a hemp necklace that I just bought that day. I had a chill through my whole body when suddenly the necklace fell into my lap. We stopped again, and I went to investigate the necklace. I figured it was a faulty clasp on it, but it wasn't. It was frayed apart in a spot as if it was just pulled apart. We all started pulling on it and playing tug-of-war with it just to see if we could cause it to tear the way it did, and it wouldn't tear. What could have caused this? I hate to say it, but we started playing again. And to no surprise, we're talking to the same spirit. One, I forgot to mention, you could tell whatever this was definitely feeding off of our energy. This was no longer a slow planchette creeping across the board and us asking each other, "Are you moving it?" No. At this point, it was hard to keep up with everything. Spelling, the planchette literally sliding out from underneath our fingers. We asked if it broke the necklace, and it replied that it was going for my glasses. A few minutes later, we were still asking questions, and it just started replying with the word doors. To every question, doors. We end the session and decide to move down to the main level of the house and play down there. We open the door to the room that we're in, and our surprise, sitting perfectly dead center in the middle of the hallway, right in front of the door, is the dog kennel we tossed out there earlier, and the latch door was wide open again. When we tossed it out there, it was upside down. on its end up against the wall and the door was latched. We continued our journey down the hall and towards the stairs. We noticed every door in the whole house is wide open. Some doors were left particularly open to begin with, but some doors in the house stayed closed always. Every one of them was wide open. Downstairs was the same thing. Even the front door and the back door to the outside were open too. We locked these doors prior to playing, and the screen door was still locked from the inside. So we all started checking through the whole house to make sure nobody was there and nothing. The last place to check was the basement. Oh, the basement. No one wanted to go down there after all of this was happening. But we all went as a group anyway. There was nothing. So we decided to head back up to the main level and play again because we had some questions that needed answers. On the way upstairs, I grabbed a soda out of the fridge that was sitting in the basement right at the bottom of the steps. I take 2 steps up the stairs and the soda can swells in my hand and starts spraying everywhere. Surely all of this can't just be happening out of coincidence. We began playing again on the main level of the house, and we kept getting the same spirit. It now answers us when we ask it its name. It replies with "Mama" every time it's asked. For some reason, we find this funny and laugh at its name, Mama. This angered it. It then started saying things like warning, crash, burn. We eventually stopped talking to it and took another small break and decided to talk with it one more time. Only this time, let's go to the basement. And so we did. We began with the question, is anyone there? And suddenly, 2 of the glass candles just shattered. And the planchette just kept going back and forth, M-A, 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 and it kept doing this until we asked another question. Once it answered it, it would just continue spelling out M-A, 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 and just continued nonstop. A few answers. It replied with 666. After about 5 minutes, a pair of jeans lying in the basement caught on fire. We still think this had something to do with the candle shattering. Maybe an ember off the wick or something. I don't know what to believe after all of this. We stopped playing for good at that moment, but it wasn't done. We'd left the board in the basement, and after saying goodbye, went upstairs. As we crossed the kitchen from the basement steps, things were flying off the shelves across the room. It was a total of 3 canned goods, a coffee mug, and a broom, if I remember clearly. We'd made it into the dining room, where a few picture frames started to knock over and fall off the walls, and then it just stopped, like the calm of a storm, for about 30 seconds. And then the whole house started shaking and made a horrible noise. I don't even know how to describe the sound, but if a house could growl, that sound was the sound. It was about 3:40 a.m. then, and we all decided to leave and go to Denny's for breakfast until the sun rose before returning. Most people look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them this story. I don't care what they believe. 5 others were with me that day, and they all witnessed the same thing. Years passed, and one day, just for fun, I whipped out that old Ouija board. A new set of friends who were talking about Ouija boards and were skeptical. I never told them my story. I just said that I had one, and they wanted to play. We started a session and asked if there was anyone there. No activity on the board for 5 to 10 minutes, and then it spelled out very quickly, M-A-M-A. I immediately put the board up and I never touched it again. They seemed confused, so I told them my story and they were skeptical. I don't need to prove anything that bad. Years later, Carrie watched a documentary about demons, and there was a man with a very similar experience with a Ouija board. Frighteningly similar. All the way down to Mama. Apparently, this Mama is a demon that goes by the name of Zozo. And Carrie learned it was nothing to mess with. she was literally playing with fire that night. Since, Carrie has burned the board and no longer uses a Ouija board.